The wait was worth it. Episode 2 of The Penguin managed to top the intensity of Episode 1, as well as dive into the mess that Oz has created for himself. When we last saw Oz, he and Vic were enjoying some slushies, and he was exonerated for Alberto's death, for the most part. Their plan to get Sal Maroni to accept the blame for the Don's death was tacitly holding together. The only problem is that Sofia Falcone, Alberto's sister, was not letting go of any of her suspicions. And this is where we pick up in Episode 2. Now, before we get into the plot and spoilers, I'll speak on this episode in generalities. First off, Lauren Lefranc delivered another great script for this second episode titled Inside Man. And as a former English teacher, I not only appreciate how she's developing narrative and structure throughout, but Oz, this Oz, definitely has some characteristics of Richard III, who may be the greatest villain in all of William Shakespeare's works, and I do not see this as a coincidence. They both use murder to eliminate the so-called princes that would rise above them into power. For Richard, it's his nephews. For the Penguin, it's Alberto, and now soon to be Sofia, probably by the end of the season, if things work out the way we think they're going to work out. Richard III uses forced marriage to gain more power and inside control of the royal family. Oz is using manipulation and coercion to create a symbiotic relationship between himself and Sofia as a way to influence events within the Falcone crime family. So, like a marriage, but still similar, they're both manipulating women to gain power and gain access into a specific family. And both Oz and Richard are masters of deception and duplicity. For each character, these are their defining characteristics. And lastly, they both have physical deformities that play a large role in their psychology. Richard III has a deformity from birth in the form of a humped back. Oz has one in the form of a clubbed foot. Each would have lumbered along in very similar fashion. So yes, I see a connection, or at least an inspiration, between the character of Richard III and the Penguin. Hats off to Lauren Lefranc for taking an already established major character in the DC universe, using some great inspirational material, and just layering him to the point where an actor such as Colin Farrell can really lose himself in the role. There's a lot there for Colin to play with. Now, we'll talk later on about Farrell's work in this episode, but if we must talk about acting right now, and if we're being honest, this episode, at least the first half of it, really belonged to Kristen Milioti, and we've got to give her a lot of praise for her performance this week. But before we get to that, if you could just take a moment to like, subscribe, comment, and share this video out, we really appreciate it. It helps out the channel each and every week. Now, Kristen Milioti as Sofia Falcone was unnerving in episode 1 when first introduced. A released serial killer who's responsible for the deaths of at least 7 women, but in this episode, she really develops as an actress a lot of the physical and verbal tics and attributes that make a good performance great. Hand movements, eye movements. She constantly looks like she's wound up tight like a ball of springs, just ready to explode in a fit of anger and violence. And everything we learn about her as the story unfolds, we as an audience are completely bought into her ferocity. She is the Penguin's complete opposite. We spoke last week about how Oz can be impulsive and always thinking on his feet, always looking to manipulate his way out of a situation or into one. Yes, Oz has a plan, but a lot of the time, those plans are forced to change, and Oz needs to improvise without much time to think. Sofia is not an improviser. She's a reactor. She makes decisions based on how the world is unfolding around her, which she is kind of forced to do because she is a woman, irregardless of her name, in very much a man's world. She is not free to act or put things into motion without having it approved, and it is very rarely approved because she's looked at differently because of her gender. However, when she does act, she's a very direct and unwavering individual. Even when things do not go correctly or according to her plan, she does not improvise. She stays the course and rides out whatever storm she finds herself in. Granted, she's protected by her status and her family name, whereas Oz is not, but that is irrelevant to Sofia. Her methods are set in stone, and change or alteration from what she knows is not something she takes up very easily or accepts very much at all. Now, in a way, you could say, well, she's free now, she's released from Arkham, but the world she lives in is just as confining as the cell she used to occupy before the series started. And so that dictates a lot of what she can and cannot do. And I think later on throughout the series, as she gains more power, gains more confidence, we're going to see her start to do things that are outside of her character, at least the character that we know her to be right now. Now, beyond Kristen, every other actor was spot on and delivered in episode 2, but it is Oz and Sofia that this show continues to revolve around. The idea of dancing is mentioned on a couple of occasions throughout the dialogue, and that is exactly what these two are doing. dancing around each other, trying to size each other up and figure each other out. They are both predator and prey to one another, and that dynamic is what drives the tension to very high levels. But like I said, this episode really gave Milioti an opportunity to do for Sofia what Farrell was able to do for Oz in episode 1. All right, spoiler warning from here on in. We're going to get into the plot. We're going to go through it step by step. So if you don't want to know the plot, go ahead and click out now. Appreciate you listening this far. Okay, so we open up with a dream sequence, that of Sofia in Arkham in an orange and white striped prison jumper. She's led to a visitation room where Alberto, her brother, is waiting. Notice he's missing his pinky finger, so it's automatically known to us, all right, this is a dream. And as Sofia smiles at the sight of him, a gun raises from the dark and shoots him, and her dream world then begins to collapse. In reality, she's with her therapist under hypnosis, but now she's struggling to wake up and needs not only verbal guidance, but physical restraint to settle down. And even though she looks vulnerable in the scene, don't be fooled. That lasts for only a second, because Milioti is great at oscillating between someone who is needing help and someone who's carrying a boiling anger beneath the surface. We then cut to Oz. He's back to visit Sal Maroni, and this time Sal has his family with him, including his wife, and we see that these are not Italians, but Persians, which brings another dynamic to the conflict between the two families. Now, instead of Italians fighting each other, this gives the conflict some history, because the Italians and the Persians have a long legacy of conquering and occupying each other's territories all the way back before the First Crusades. There's a real bitterness between those two races that still exists to even this day. Take it from me, I'm both Italian and Persian. Now again, this is another great choice by Lefranc to give something a different perspective, to give it a little bit more depth. And again, these are the little choices that this showrunner is making that makes this show so good. And let's not forget, this is Oz potentially making a decision without thinking about full consequences again. He could be seen or he could be ratted out on. There's a lot that can go wrong with Oz visiting Sal Maroni, but he's going to take that risk. Now, Sal listens to his wife, and that's obvious, and she seems to be the one in charge now. She does not trust Oz and thinks very little of him, comparing him to a dog that can be trained. And under that context, Sal accepts Oz's deal. The Penguin will deliver the drops drug trade to Maroni, and Maroni will take the credit for Alberto's death. The plan? Oz will lead the Falcones' drug caravan down a predetermined route. He will give Maroni the details of that route, giving them the ability to hijack it and then take over the entire drop trade. And of course, they will leave Oz alive and no one will be none the wiser. But a problem arises when Johnny Vitti, the number 3 guy in the Falcone organization, shows up and tells Oz to ride with the drops, the actual drugs. Oz is now being put in the main vehicle that the Maroni family has instructions to blindly kill everyone and anyone inside. So again, Oz's plan is blown up and he has to improvise, which he does. As the shooting starts, he shields himself and takes out anyone who could be a potential witness against him. The Maronis get the drugs and Oz returns to the Falcone mansion to act outraged at being betrayed. He's trying to throw people off the scent, and he's doing a wonderful job of it because he's covered in blood. He wants to make it look like Johnny Vitti is the traitor in the Falcone family, even planning on using pictures of Vitti having an affair with the wife of the number 2 guy in the organization, Luca. In other words, there's a lot of flammable material there. Oz just needs to pick the right time to light the match, and he'll set it all ablaze. Now, Sofia walks in on this meeting with Oz and the leadership of the Falcone family, which now includes her uncle, who is taking over as the head of the family. And she begins to question all of their decisions, and she begins to demand action, especially her preferred action, which is outright aggression towards the Maroni family. But she is outright dismissed by almost everyone in the room but Oz. And even though Sofia evokes fear, you can't help but feel a little bit for her as she works through her grief for her brother. But now with that said, we as an audience know that this decision to marginalize Sofia from the family leadership is only going to bring very bad consequences to everyone involved, because she is as driven, if not more, than anyone in that room. She just does not have the tact or experience because she's always been left out, unlike Alberto. But make no mistake, every time she is kicked out, marginalized, or not listened to, they are creating their own monster. The person who knows this is Oz. He can see it, and using his talent for manipulation, he plants the seed with Sofia that he can be her right-hand man, just like he was her father's. But Sofia does not accept his offer. To her, he is still just one of the boys, the old guard, and she does not see support. She sees someone who can potentially hold her down, just like all the others. After this, we learn that Oz hates cilantro on his tacos. Who doesn't? It's another funny quirk that continues to give Oz a complete character, and Sofia is trying to learn to live with the Gotham public hating her and wanting her removed from society. She is, after all, the hangman, and really no one in the public is very happy that she's been released from prison. We come back to Oz's apartment where he and Vic are throwing a party, which is to celebrate still being alive after the Moroni hit on a drug shipment. During that time, Sofia is tracking down a former corrupt detective that worked for her father and bribes him to go and find out who the traitor is in her family. And as night turns to day, Oz gets a call and has to go visit his mother. Her dementia is getting worse and she was found wandering the streets by a neighbor. Oz, even though he is late for Alberto's funeral service, stays with his mom and dances with her. And this is our first dance reference. And during this dance, she delivers a very hard line to Oz. She asks, "What am I if my son is nothing?" Now for Oz, this is just another example for the audience to see how his mother is such a toxic force in his life. Even though Oz sees it completely differently, Oz sees it as her nurturing him, encouraging him, pushing him in a positive way. After they're done dancing, Oz leaves his mother and arrives late to the funeral. He finds Sofia and tells her a poignant story about burying his brothers and how he and his mother struggled with grief, only finding relief later by dancing to live jazz. Again, a second dance reference. And you can see that this sentimentality is really starting to work on Sofia. You're starting to see little cracks in her facade. She's starting to accept Oz. She's even beginning to kind of like him a little bit. Now, after the funeral, everybody goes back to the Falcone mansion for the after-service gathering. Sofia's corrupt detective brings her an unconscious member of the Moroni family who can tell them who the traitor really is. Meanwhile, Oz is taken by the Moroni family and almost killed himself until he gives up the blackmail information he has on the Falcone crime family and then is given an ultimatum to get their man back. And again, what's great about this scene is you see how Oz is on the precipice of death, but is able to manipulate his way out of it. Call it a certain form of intelligence, call it a certain form of instinct, but Oz has that. Now, if you look at the scene with Sofia, when she is delivered the man, she's sort of taken aback. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to react. She's at a service for her brother. She's at her home. She has to think quickly, and thinking quickly is not her strong suit. She tells them to put him in the basement, where probably anybody could accidentally come across this man and say, what the hell's going on? It really shows the difference between how Sofia is more of a planner and a reactor, and Oz can think on his feet. Now, after the ultimatum is given to Oz, he and Vic make their way to the mansion. Vic needs to plant stolen jewels in Vidi's car to make it look like he's the one who killed Alberto, and Oz is going to find the member of the Moronis that they're holding hostage in the basement and get him to say Vidi is the traitor. But as Oz is doing his job, Vic calls and says things are not going to plan. So Oz again improvises and kills the Moroni family member, which seems like an impulsive move without thinking about consequences again. Or maybe for Oz it is the lesser of two evils, his present situation in the Falcone mansion versus the potential future situation with the Moronis, and only time will tell. But again, it's another example of Oz being impulsive and thinking on his feet and maybe not thinking about the consequences all the way through. Now, while Oz is busy murdering, Sofia is not well and having anxiety and acting out during the meal service. She's literally stuffing handfuls of food into her mouth and purposely making others uncomfortable. At first, it's kind of funny to see, but then you realize how disturbing it is. And you begin to realize that there may be two sides to Sofia. One that she's always constantly keeping under wraps. It's one of those types of personalities that has no filter. It has no inhibitions, and it really doesn't care what you think about her. But again, through great writing and great acting, we see these little seeds planted and really keeps us guessing and really keeps the character interesting. Now, after killing the informant, Oz is able to slip out. Sofia is discovered by the bosses that she's hiding someone downstairs, and they are furious. How do they find out? Well, Oz tells them. And they go and they find the man dead. The only solution, gather all the men still alive from the night of the drug heist and search them for the knife that killed the hostage. Now, this is the only part of the story that I had an issue with. These are mobsters. I would assume all of them are carrying a knife and a gun. Probably two guns, but maybe I'm being a little nitpicky here and you can let me know that. However, the knife they're looking for is in Oz's pocket, and as they are being searched, he starts to fight with Vidi as a distraction and a chance to slip that knife into Castillo's pocket. Coincidentally, this is a great way to get revenge because Castillo's the man who tortured him in episode 1. And when they find the knife in Castillo's pocket and he denies even having knowledge of it, he is then killed by the new Don. Now, Sofia demanded a gun over and over and over again because she wanted to be the one to kill Castillo. I mean, she's absolutely unhinged at this point because she sees Castillo, she sees a traitor, she sees the person responsible for killing Alberto. She wants her revenge. But again, since the Don sees this, he picks up his gun, he shoots Castillo. It's another example of believing that Sofia as a woman is not capable or does not have the ability to manage the act of killing, even though Sofia is already a 7-time killer at this point. To further this humiliation, the Don then pulls her aside and sends her away to Italy because he finds her unstable and he finds her someone who's not capable of handling business correctly. This is either the third or fourth, maybe even the fifth time that she's been demeaned in this episode, and that's it. She's had enough. That's the last straw. She agrees to go to Italy, but we all know she's lying. In the meantime, Oz and Vic are tasked with burying the bodies, and Oz takes a moment to completely traumatize Vic because he failed to complete his task. He failed to get the jewels inside Johnny Viti's car. Now, how does he humiliate him? He makes him lie down with the dead bodies and asks him how he likes it, because when he fails, this is where he's going to end up. It's a pure lesson that Oz is giving Vic. It's a sick one, but it's a lesson. But Oz is not going to kill Vic. He has a soft spot for Vic, and he forgives him, and he helps him up. Oz then gets a phone call, and we immediately know as an audience that it's got to be Sofia. And in our final shot, we get our answer. Yes, it was Sofia. She meets up with Oz inside the Falcone family crypt and asks for his help in taking out all of these men who keep telling her what to do. And Oz accepts by simply responding, "Let's dance." And again, it's a metaphor that they continue to build on throughout the entire episode, and it fits so well. And thus the episode ends. And I understand that there's some out there reviewing this episode that take issue with the criticism of the patriarchy. Take it from me, someone who has had their fair share of negative comments on other videos when complaining about activist writing with no point to advancing storytelling. It's just basically the woke agenda. This is different. This is not woke. This is not a woke agenda. This is not activist writing. The criticisms of the male-dominated society in this episode, especially in traditional Italian families, and especially Italian crime families, is fairly accurate. I think we can all agree on that. And the way it is portrayed in this episode is critical to the character development of Sofia. It's critical to the storyline that is a struggle for the underworld, and critical to the limited options and choices both Sofia and Oz will have going forward. It's not there just to be there. It's there as a plot device, as a narrative device, as a motivational device. Again, that is not activist writing. That is critical and creative writing at its best. A story that is told so well, produced so meticulously, and is able to carry a social message that is rooted in the essence of the conflict being delivered on screen. That's where the quality drives the intent and message, not the other way around, where the message dictates or more likely destroys the product. And if you need more evidence that the writing of the show is so very much layered, only after 2 episodes we have multiple conflicts that Oz is juggling, and it makes everything he does consequential, important, potentially life-altering. We have conflicts of Oz versus Sofia, Oz versus the Falcones, Oz versus the Maronis, Oz versus Vic. And yes, that is a conflict because Vic is a human being who will start thinking on his own soon, while Oz is trying to keep him under control and mold him in his own image. Then we have Oz versus his mother. Yes, it doesn't seem like a conflict, but eventually it is, especially since she's not supposed to exist. It's going to be something that causes stress, so again, it's a conflict. And maybe the most important conflict in the whole show is Oz versus Oz, because he has been his own worst enemy since this all began. And it mainly boils down to his impulsiveness. He may have the best plans in the world, but his impulse control is really, really poor and gets him into really, really tough situations. Now, with all of that said, I'll just say this. In my opinion, The Penguin is proving to be the best show put on television this year. And that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I thank you for watching. Remember, I'm still your reluctant gringo from south of the border. Salud and a huevo.